here. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you guys are all doing well. If you can, if you're able to, please turn your cameras on. And as I mentioned, if you just popped in, you can leave your microphone on mute. And the only reason is because I'm here to tell you this is really an opportunity for us to really kind of connect with each other and learn from each other. So if you're cooking or if you're driving or whatever it is, no big deals. And I want this to really to be something that you guys can connect something in this leadership book so that we can all benefit from it and as well as grow from it. So we're going to get started here. We kind of left off at leading from above the line. I did post last week's video in our page. And so if you know some of the other group members and they're worried about like, I haven't been able to attend, just set their mind at ease that we'd love them here live if they can make it. Just a little infomercial real quick about the time. It's going to change from week to week. I hope that doesn't throw everybody off too much. And the reason being is because I know some of you are on the East Coast and it's tough to get that your schedule worked out when we're on the West Coast here. So we're going to try to move it around as best we can. I'm also balancing my work schedule as well as our business schedule to make this time for us as well. So let's jump in. We're in really kind of starting off on page 13. And one of the things that I wanted to start with is I love how this book really just uses a really big mirror. I don't know if you guys are feeling the same thing for our thinking, how we think about who we are in this world, how we think about how things are happening around us, whether they're happening at the effect of us or if they're happening for us. And I think this frame of reference, this black line, how he illustrates this is really a powerful tool because it gets you to start thinking about where do your thoughts reside most of the time. And if you're a lot like myself, and I'm sure most of you, a lot of it is about getting it right. I mean, he kind of points that out on the next page where he's really talking about we are always thinking about being above the line or below the line is good or bad. It's just a state of consciousness. And so obviously there's a tremendous benefit of practicing knowing where you're at. So knowing where you are in terms of your thought life and interaction, right? An interaction about whatever it may be, whether something happens financially in your life and you automatically, our normal response, the way that we're constantly have been programmed is to start to blame, to shift the blame, right, to somebody else. It's somebody else doing it to us. And I think the reality is that this is not the place to remain, but know that it's a normal part of being a human being. It's part of our programming. It's part of how we were raised, right? And so don't assign any guilt. Rather, I would just practice, as the authors illustrate, of being really good at recognizing where you are in that moment. And then deciding whether you are ready to shift, right? That below the line thinking is really those three areas of the drama triangle that we know so well. We talk about on trainings, we read in the life book. It's the hero, the villain, and the victim. And so it's knowing that in those places, we have less opportunity to move in a space that is going to help us to not be at the effect of, right? Where we're starting to be the conscious leaders of our life and in our businesses as well. I think this is so helpful, not only in relationships. I mean, I think that's primarily for me at least, I don't know about you, but I see also in our business. In the business of helping people, I think the big shift, and the book talks about this on the last kind of the chapter summary, and we'll get to that, how he really talks about the big shift in this book is going from to me to by me. And we're going to get into those 4 ways of leading. The by me and the to me, these are all wrestling of control, right? And so I love how he phrases that the control, like the lack of control, once we get to the by me, it's like, yay, we're finally in control of what's happening to us. But the reality is that the need for us to be in control of most things that we can't control, right? We can't control other people's emotions. We can't control other people's responses. We can't control the events that happen in our life. But we can take radical responsibility for our response, right? And so I love how I'm starting to see more often as when things are happening, I have an opportunity to learn from those events, and then decide, I've been down this road before. How do I want to respond? So I love how he phrases on page 14. He says, some swim in these conscious waters consciously and others unconsciously. And so what we're learning and practicing to do is to be conscious about where we are. Self-awareness, we talked about this last week. Self-awareness is the ability to tell ourselves the truth. Okay, it's your guys' turn. I want some of you to come off of mute and just share with us in all transparency. How has this been going since you've started this journey, the last couple of weeks of reading just 5 minutes a day? How is this happening in your life where you're starting to see that you're more self-aware and also the ability to tell yourself the truth? I don't know about you. I know Cindy's about to speak, but this is a really challenging thing for me. Cindy.
Yeah, so briefly, I am for the second time in my life going through elder care with a very, very sick parent where all the responsibility of their medicine, their life, their every need is falling back firmly on my shoulders again. And this time, I mean, yesterday I woke up and I looked at myself in the mirror and my eyes are swollen and my face looks like I'm back on cortisone. And it's like, hell no, not going there. I'm not doing the drive-throughs to get fast food when I leave my dad's because I'm stressed out. I'm making sure I have my fuelings. This is not happening to me. This is, okay, what lessons do I need to learn this time from this experience? So really living this round above the line and making the conscious decision that I'm going to live it above the line. And it's forcing me to really tighten up with my scheduling and really putting rocks in the calendar, which I never did to this extent before. So those are probably 2 of the biggest things now. They're kicking in where this information, this training, this whole new realm of thought processes is working for me so that I can continue to work for others, and still keep it all in some semblance of balance and mitigate the stress.
I love that. Thank you, Cindy.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think to your point, I think oftentimes if you think about just the way that our ego responds in those moments, right? I love how he talks about in this book, or all of the authors are really writing this book, but the need to be right about what's really happening is about it. It's almost like our response to things is really about equating to I should say our response is like has the same response of protecting our physical life. Like that's how our ego wants to respond. And like, no, this is why it's happening and it's not my fault. And this person's to blame, or this situation is to blame. And I think the opportunity is to see it much bigger than that how could the obstacle be the way for not just for you to experience more in life, but for others to experience something from what you're experiencing, right? How you and your journey, how that could be for you and for others, right? And so it definitely is tough, and it's not to undermine, or I guess that's not the right word, but it's not to say to process your feelings. It's not saying you can't feel sad, you can't feel this, right? I think we read this part in the book where that victim part, we don't assign that to a child, right? That has been physically abused or some other form of abuse. They have been victimized. It's to the adult that was victimized when they were a child that still is remaining in that victim place where they're no longer being victimized, right? This happened a long time ago, but yet that still is driving them to kind of recycle and reprocess the same things over and over. Okay, someone else, anyone else that from what we're kind of talking about here in this self-awareness and this ability to tell ourselves the truth, anything that's come up this week in kind of that struggle of trying to be right? Chris, go ahead.
Hey, you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So I was reading the book and I was connecting because I know me and you on some of our check-ins talked about it, but you mentioned the ego and how we tend to want to protect it at all costs. And I've noticed that, like all married couples, like when me and Yessie get into a disagreement over something, I get very defensive and I try to ask myself, why am I doing this? Why am I cutting her off to protect my ego? So I think what the thinking about above and below the line does is it puts it perspective for things to recognize where you're at and be self-aware. Because I was doing that subconsciously, just not even knowingly, and it was causing the argument to get worse.
Absolutely.
So by recognizing, okay, why am I feeling like this need to defend myself? Okay, and then realizing where I'm at in perspective to the line, and then I could, now that I'm conscious of it, I could choose my response rather than just react.
Yep.
And I know it's still work in progress, but I think now that I have a plan or an idea of how to respond better, or if I catch myself responding in a certain way, I could at least stop, challenge, choose, or remove myself, or vice versa, and then prevent a bigger argument or a bigger misunderstanding. And that's all.
I love it. Perfect. Yeah, well said. Stacy, did you have something you wanted to add? I saw you take yourself off of mute.
Yeah, so I was kind of in the same spot with Chris at work with management being more always placing the blame on, oh, well, we're not succeeding at this. And I would get very defensive. And, you know, I just had surgery, so I've been home for the last 6 days. So I've actually been able to really read up on this to figure out, okay, what can I do to where I'm not taking it personal? Because I don't want to be sucked into the same areas that they're in, because they have that mentality of they're always right. Their ideas are always the best ones, regardless of what we, you know, the feedback that we provide. So it's really helped me to to be more aware of how that behavior is and how detrimental it could be.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to react differently about it. So, you know, one of the things at work I struggled for a long time with was being in control of everything, and reading how you can't be in control of other people's behaviors is like, okay, no wonder why that I'm not getting anywhere with them, you know, because I had that mentality. So it's really helping me to think, okay, how can I change the approach, or what can I do better to get more productivity out of them by addressing it in a different manner. So I'm really enjoying that part of it. So
yeah, I love it. And before we go to Eric, I think one of the things too is, you know, he talks about the big shift in this whole book is really about shifting from that to me to by me. And I think that's the most powerful thing we can learn is we're moving out of the drama triangle, right? And that's the most important thing for you and for me and for all of us, because it doesn't serve us. It makes us feel icky, and it's like we're frustrated. And you look at our business that we're in with health coaching, right? How many of you had clients where they know what to do and you've done a good job, and because they're not doing it, then you start to blame them, or you're blaming Optavia because the order was late. Oh my God, if this wouldn't have this and they wouldn't have, right? Part of it is just realizing like, hey, things are going to happen. I can take responsibility and say, this is my business. I am Optavia. or I am in this, in your case, Stacy, I am this person in this position and I have these responsibilities. And all that I can do is do what I can do. What I, right, is choose my response. Because at the end of the day, hopefully what you're seeing is what I'm seeing, is that I end up having less stress. People experience me much differently, especially my family, because I'm not coming home, oh, this person did this and you wouldn't believe what so-and-so said. Like, and here's the scary thing. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but our kids start to emulate those things, right? And then you start correcting them and you're like, well, wait a minute, where did they learn that from, right? So I love the ability for us to even now shift, and not so perfectly, but we start to make some progress. And I love that. So Eric, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just excited that I was able to find the hand thing. It took me a while to figure out the hand raising thing, but hey, always glad to be on here. I'm trying to do it for a couple of minutes, but this is really hard for me. Change is hard, but then I'm slowly realizing that it's hard because it's important to me. Okay. When something's important, it's difficult. And that's just the way I see it. Coming off a 30-year military career where the Navy paid me as the chief knew everything. The chief had the answers. The chief was never wrong. Now back in the civilian world, 6 months back into it, I'm finding this difficult. And then it really resonates me with above the line. As the chief, I determine where that line was. And that changed for me any given day. Now I just have to realize, hey, you know what? That line's here for me. Now I don't have the ability. I'm not in the Navy anymore. I'm not in charge of people like I was anymore. I'm just kind of, and the way I see it is, you always hear lead from the front, right? I've kind of changed that a little bit, because sometimes when you lead from the front, there's people back there messing around behind you. So I sometimes like to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to lead from the front. Now I can lead from the middle because I can look around, and sometimes also lead from the rear. This way I can see what's going on. So, I'm trying to just think things differently that way.
I love it. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's tough. I think, what you're talking about is something that works in that environment. Because we don't need, when you're commanding, troops of people, or you have a big mission, you don't need a lot of input, right? And so part of it is you just need to make a decision and have people follow orders. This is much different because we're talking about changing behavior, and it starts with us. And so I love how you're approaching it. It should be challenging, like you said, because you care. And I hope that all of you are saying is what I'm seeing, is that the feedback that is coming in the form of the way people are experiencing you, how you're seeing yourself change, feels good. You're feeling less stress. You're seeing people. You're seeing people grow because you've decided to grow, and you've decided to say, I'm going to call the truth here. And the truth is here's where I was. And it's okay for me to go back and go, hey, you know what? This is an area of opportunity for me. I need some support in this area, or, right. I think I think some of the most, the best leaders that I've ever seen have these two attributes: it's courage and humility. And without those two components, you really can't lead people, at least well. And especially in what we do, right, is leading people well takes that humility. Because I've worked with a lot of clients this week, and I think the most important thing that I can do is just share my own struggle, my own story. We talk about that a lot in health coaching, is share your story, but do it vulnerably, because if you don't, you won't be able to build trust. And you have to do that with all humility, and it takes a lot of courage to do it. So I love that, Eric. Thank you so much. Let's take this next couple minutes. Let's kind of jump ahead, unless there's something that stood out to you that you'd like to point out. And let's talk about the 4 ways of leading. It really starts on page 25. And I'd like to kind of unpack some of these things. I'd like to start with any questions that you guys, and again, I don't have all the answers. I think collectively we can work through these things together. But I think any of these things, these 4 ways, stand out to you in the way of something that was inspiring for you, challenging, or maybe confusing, where you're like, this is one that I'm really struggling to understand. Any of those. So let's start there. Okay, don't all talk at once. Anything that challenged you in these 4 ways of leading, something that inspired you, or something that left you kind of like, I'm not really sure how this applies to me, or understanding this, and maybe collectively we can make our way through.
Hey, Tim, it's Eric again.
Yeah.
I think for me, I've kind of found myself just recently and over the last couple of weeks, the victim. Life happens to me. Okay. This client quit because of me. This client couldn't continue on because of me. Maybe I didn't do something right. Maybe we're doing something wrong as coaches. Maybe our coaches are learning bad habits from us. So, I mean, it that really resonates with me, because it took me a while to, Kristen and I have kind of done the shift, a little bit of role reversal, I guess, where this was her before. Now this is kind of me as we're getting larger and larger, and I think I'm feeling this way only because I want it, I want our coaches to experience it, what we're actually experiencing. So I think, it's like, I need to get out of that here. And that's what really gets me, is I'm just kind of putting the blame on myself, but blaming others as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's almost like, and I talk about this a lot at work, and I say work, I'm talking about the firehouse, is consequentialism. You can do something the right way, and because the response isn't what you wanted it to be, then it almost makes you challenge why you're doing it a certain way. It may not be the best way. And that doesn't mean that we can't look at it and go, is this something that I'm not open and coachable and curious in? Am I not taking, to your point, are there things that I am just resistant against making the change in? Or is this just a part of the other person, right? Meaning their ability to shift or to move or to take feedback, or all of those things. And so part of it is being good at telling yourself the truth, but it always doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong, right? If you have if you're practicing using that mirror and going, I'm doing things in a way that is good for people. I'm helping them to create. I'm not hero coaching. I'm empowering people. I'm plugging them in. I'm doing all the things. Then the danger that we all think exists, where we feel like we have to change the way we're doing things, may just be part of the process, and may just be a part of the other person having to grow and to move at their own pace, their own willingness to experience more, whether it's in their business or in their life. I see this a lot of times, and I think this is the danger of being a to-me leader, because it's always that you're at the effect of, right? And so when you can experience like, hey, the by me way, right? The by me is abandoning that thing that you are at the center of, at the effect of, that you are consciously creating with other people, right? They have to make a decision whether or not to make the move or make the shift or to make the decision. I always say with my clients, all of the change and transformation happens in between the check-ins, right? The check-ins are really just the opportunity to help people to shift if they're willing to. Anyone else? Yessie, go ahead.
So I was trying to find my page because I'm actually reading the audio or listening to the audio.
Okay.
And I finally got the book. It's more
Awesome.
visual learner. But on page 29, when I was listening to the audio, I kid you not, I would stop doing the dishes and be like, holy moly, this is me. And it's, Dr. Ace, obviously the books kind of relate to this, but this one specifically, I felt like I didn't feel attacked, but I felt like, okay, yeah, this is me. I need to stop this. So on page 29, the middle paragraph where it says those are operating in the to me victim consciousness, Let me speed up to the bottom where it says their thoughts and conversations are often dominated by why. Why did this happen to me? Why don't they respect me? Why are we losing the market share? Blah, 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 those examples.
Mhm.
I tend to put myself like, why is this happening to me? And I tend to want to like diagnose myself, I guess you could say. I always caught myself saying like, oh, I had like father issues, like didn't have a good relationship with my father. Maybe this is why I do some stuff with like my husband or my friends, my family. So I'm always trying to diagnose my why is this happening to me? And it made me realize I need to stop doing that. Like literally put the past in the past, move forward. It is what it is. What can you do now? What can you do today? So I mean, I heard it before, but just hearing it in this book made me like, holy moly, like this is a wake up call, Yessie. Like you heard it many times. Now it's like, okay, you really got to put this into action and stop letting the past like reflect your decisions as a person currently. So that spoke out to me the most. I'm like really far ahead in the audiobook, so I was trying to go back to it. But yeah, I'm about to finish this audio pretty soon.
That's awesome. No, I love it. And you know what? You're not alone. I think everybody on this call has experienced that probably today at least once. I think the opportunity for all of us is to get practice at shifting. It's the hardest thing because it goes back to what we talked about earlier. Our ego wants to be right. It defends itself like you're going to die if you're wrong or if you're in a space that's right. And so part of it is, I know for me, is just knowing what the consequence of staying where I am and not shifting. Like who, and I ask this to clients all the time in that second question on the health assessment, who benefits from you getting to your healthy goal, your healthy goals? Who benefit? How does life change? What happens if you don't? What happens if you don't? Right? The opposite. Like if you never make any progress in those areas, who's affected by that? And I think those are great questions to ask ourselves because it's at the end of the day, taking radical responsibility, which is the first commitment, is really tough. It's really tough. So I want to encourage all of you just to consider this is a journey. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And so don't approach this book like, okay, now I know what above and below the line is. I know what as me and by me is. And now I'm going to get right every time. And we go about it with this all or nothing thinking. And we just go, forget it. It's just the way that I am. It's the way that I was raised, right? Blaming below the line, as opposed to going, I love how the shift question goes is, how am I creating this and keeping this going, right? Those are great questions to write down, right? Write it on a 3x5 card. If this is something that you're really struggling in your thought life, is how do I let go of blaming anyone else and for the circumstances? And how can I be open and curious to learn all that life has to teach us, right? What's the benefit for that for me? Who benefits most from it? Besides me, who else, right? Cindy?
Just briefly, I like how, and it took me a little bit to sort of process it, but the all or nothing thing is huge. But if you look at, so on page 26, you've got as me, life is me, the to me or happening, to me. But if you flip the script on any one of these scenarios, any one of these challenges, any one of these things that you face, and if basically the before is kind of that, it's what is the problem, what is the scenario, what is the challenge. The after is you're almost working to the point where it's the by me. So it's the surrender.
Yes, absolutely.
How do I get from here to here? And if you can figure out what that road is in between, it's not going to be the same with every client. It's not going to be the same with every scenario. It's not going to be the same with you every time, because even as you age and as you experience life, you're going to look at things differently. But I love that it just makes it a little more clear. Okay. And yeah, write it down, because at least you can see it in black and white then, which is what we learn, with the life book. Okay. You've got it written down where you're starting, and then where do you want to finish? And then your mind will help you to process going from one to the other.
Yes. And you're so right. I love what you said, surrender. And I want to end on this because I think this is a great question just to kind of ponder this week. And as we kind of work through 5 minutes a day, guys, just processing, writing, circling, journaling, surrender. And he quotes it on page 34, surrender or letting go is the gateway to move from by me to through me. And just know, like, we're just trying to shift from as me to by me. But if we can master the surrender, like the surrender to, like, I'm not going to die if I'm wrong, right? It's not about me being right. It's really about the letting go of wanting to be in control of people, things, and circumstances where we were never meant to be in control of and have never really been in control of is so powerful and often chaotic. So that surrender is so hard and yet so easy. It really is. And so as I practice it more often, I get just a little tiny bit better. Probably nobody else notices it but me. And so, and that's just enough, right? So I love that. I think that's great. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. Again, just encouraging you guys, just continue to chip away at this and really make this, this experience of this leadership group just one of personal growth for yourself. And I think what you'll start to see it not only will bleed into your personal lives and the relationships really that matter the most to you, but also to the people that you're serving, right? In whatever capacity that you're doing, whether you're at home with your children, serving your children, your family, or your community, or your job that you have, or your business in health coaching. I just think the value people need this. I mean, just look at the world and the state that we're in. I think this is just an amazing opportunity to be the thought leader in your community that lives these things out, and people experience you so much differently. And this is exactly why I always encourage my clients, like, if you want to experience more, this is why coaching is so important, health coaching with us, because we're going on a journey that's far beyond the scale. This is really about a personal development journey that I guarantee you will be worth your $199. I mean, it's just awesome. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And I'll put the recording up in just a little bit, and we'll see you next week. I'll put the date that we're going to meet next week, and that's it. Thanks, guys. Take care.